I tell you what, who here, and it's going to take a little courage, I'll go ahead. Who's failed a class before? Anybody? No, I'm talking not D-, I'm like F on the transcript. Yeah? Yeah, I got a little thin there. You failed a test before. I'm talking real failure. That's test failure. Like flunked. I have 19 hours of F on my college transcript. Yeah, I went to school in the 1900s. You don't get to like a do-over and it goes away. It's just there. Yeah, so if any feel like leaving, that's fine. I didn't ever start out. Did any, the rest of you that have failed a class, did you ever just start out going, hey, it's the plan? Never, like nobody did. In fact, every semester for my first 3 years of college, till I got the letter saying, we're going to release you on your own recognizance for a year, every semester, get my little notebook together, and like, this time's going to be different. And it was for about 3 weeks. And then things would go wrong, and the way old Justin operates is like a little kid playing hide and seek. They shut their eyes, and they think you can't see them. I just sort of metaphorically shut my eyes and thought, this will all go away. Well, you just flunk. That's what you do. You become an Army recruiter's dream, and you carry on with your life, right? Well, today, I'm not here to talk about academic failure, but I'd love for us to get to spend a few minutes together talking about spiritual failure. And you're all a bunch of failures. No, to talk about spiritual failure, right? And what I mean is this. Just like every semester, my first 3 years of college, I would start out with these high hopes and a great plan. This time's going to be different. And it turns out it really was never different. And I would get the same result, and I would have this academic failure. Failure, failure, failure. And when I have that academic failure, I felt kind of dumb because my brother was like a straight A student. My dad had a doctor's degree. My mom had a master's degree. Apparently, I'm unrelated. But here's the thing. In particular, think of the college students, you all that are here. None of you came to college going, I'm really going to try to wreck it. And you're probably here, for the most part, because you're a Christian. You probably became a Christian maybe when you were a kid. Some of you might even have the story that says, I don't even remember not believing. You were raised in the faith. And you came here and you're like, I'm going to get in a sorority, or I'm going to move into the dorm, I'm going to get an apartment. You got fired up at church camp, whatever it is, and you're like, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to make a difference. And then, just like I drove down the strip at 12:30 a.m. last night, saw some of you there. No, I'm teasing. I didn't. Some of you, though, I promise you, somewhere, you've been here 4 days, and you've already blown it. Like you thought, I'm gonna make a difference. And some of you may be sitting here today just kind of covered in shame, like, what in the world have I done? I've lost any ability that I have to make an influence in my sorority or fraternity because I did what they did. Like, I'm just like them. Now, unless you think we're only talking to college students, think about this. Every one of you that are married, in fact, I always ask every couple that I'm going to marry, I say, how many times do you want to be married? To this day, I've never had somebody say, I don't know, 3. Like, never. I'm not mocking those that are suffering the pain of divorce, right? But we're just saying, we all start out as believers going, my marriage is going to be really exceptional. I'm going to put it, I can't imagine being mad at this lady, right? And now, don't raise your hands, but husbands and wives, is there anybody else on earth that you've been meaner to? No. Is there anybody else on earth that can make you madder? No. Is there anybody, is there really any place else where you feel like, man, I've blown it? In fact, you may have blown it enough times in your marriage, you kind of do what I did in my academic life, and that's just shut your eyes and just try to live with it. So you stopped working on the marriage, stopped doing any of those things because you failed so many times. You're like, I guess it's just meant to be something you endure. Let's just try to make it till the end. Hopefully I die in my sleep, right? Let's try to make it. Now think about in your workplace. Maybe you got fired up in college. You came to church a bunch. You got in a small group. You grew. And you're like, I'm going to move off to, I got my job in Wyandotte, Oklahoma. And it's going to be amazing. I'm going to have an influence there. And you got into that job, and you're a few months into that job, and you looked up and you realized, wait, I'm no different than any of them. And I was going to make an influence. And you realized, man, you spiritually failed. And now you're super scared, and you don't know what you're going to do, and you feel like maybe I just got to change jobs and start over because I've messed this one up so much. How could I ever make an influence? You went to high school, you thought, I'm going to stand up for Jesus, man. It's going to be great. And it lasted about 11 minutes, and now you feel horrible. Is this ringing any bells? Well, let's look in Mark chapter 14. We're going to look at a couple of characters in Mark and a few different places today. There are colossal failures, spiritual failures. And let's just see what happens. So we've been studying the book of Mark. Jesus has completed kind of a 3-year public ministry. In that public ministry, he had gathered around him these 12 disciples. Those disciples had been his close associates. They'd lived with him. They had observed many, if not all, of the miracles that he had performed. They had listened to his teaching. They were friends. They'd seen all of these things. They understood part of it. They didn't understand part of it. But they were, if anything, they were fired up and they were following him. Jesus has taken them into this upper room. They've celebrated Passover. He's trying to tell them, we talked about this last week, that that he's going to be crucified. He's going to be raised from the dead. It doesn't really compute to him. And then he ends up saying this in verse 27 of chapter 14. So they've just completed this Passover meal, and he looks right at him. You got to put yourself there. This is your friend. This is somebody that's been building into your life this whole time. And he says, you're all going to fall away. Like, you wouldn't say it, like you probably don't say it to your kids as a parent, like you're all going to wreck it. But he's just honest. He says, you're all going to fall away, Jesus told him. And the reason he tells them this is because it had been prophesied in Scripture hundreds and hundreds of years before, where he says, I'll strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. So it's like you're falling away even that is part of God's magnificent plan to bring about his marvelous will in the world. And he goes, but after I've risen, I'm going to go ahead of you into Galilee, right? He's in Jerusalem. He's saying, when I raise from the dead, I'm going to go a day and a half walk to the north. You guys can find me there. And Peter. Now, Peter, remember, he was one of the first ones that Jesus called. And pretty early in the ministry, after they'd fed 5,000 people, he's seen all these miracles. They go up way up in the north, and the disciples are around, and Jesus goes, hey, who do people think I am? And they're kind of debating back and forth, like, well, some say Elijah, some say John the Baptist, whatever. Peter gets the right answer. He goes, you're the Christ. You're the Son of the living God. He has 100% right belief. He gets it, that he is the Messiah. He doesn't totally understand, like, what is Messiah going to do in his purpose, but he's like, you're him. And he believes that. He gets the right answer. And so Peter, just like all of us in the same way, verse 29 says, even if they all fall away, I won't. I would wager if you and I were in that room, we likely would have said a similar thing. We would hope to think we would say that, wouldn't we? I mean, in the same sense, guys, you would hope, you would like to think that if somebody was trying to really harm your wife, that you would lay down your life for her and not just use her as a human shield, right? Like you hope that you would be able to do that. Yeah, you don't know because that probably hasn't been tested. But Peter, he says, man, I'm in. And Jesus says, I'll tell you the truth. He answered, today, yes, tonight, before the rooster crows twice, you yourself will disown me on 3 different occasions. Like you're going to walk away. You're going to spiritually fail. And Peter insisted emphatically. Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. And look here. And all the others said the same. We often skip that one because we think only Peter was the one that was mouthing off. No, they all said the same thing. So think about in your own life those times when you were spiritually brave. You were going into a new relationship, a new environment, those sort of things, and you're like, this time, for real, I'm in. And then he goes away into the Garden of Gethsemane and prays, and we pick up the story in verse 43. Just as he was speaking, Judas, one of the 12, appeared. With him was a crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. He said, "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard." Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. The men seized Jesus and arrested him. So picture the chaos of the scene, but they're really only there for one person, Jesus. Nobody else is being disturbed. They're just watching this unfold. And it says, then one of those standing near drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cut off his ear. Cut off his ear. Now that's pretty incredible, right? So this person is not named in Mark, but in John chapter 18, verse 10, we learn that that person is Peter. Now he had made the claim, like, I don't even care if I have to die. Now, Jesus isn't really operating like he thought he was going to operate, and so what does Peter do right then? Is the first thing he does is just like try to take matters in his own hands, like muscle it out. Like, I'll just try this on my own. Try to figure it out. So he cuts off his ear, and Jesus says, "Am I leading a rebellion?" Said Jesus, "that you've come out with swords and clubs to capture me. Every day I was with you teaching in the temple courts, and you didn't arrest me, but the scriptures must be fulfilled." Then everyone deserted him and fled. And they all ran. It's every one of them. Then it says, a young man wearing nothing but a linen garment. That's the equivalent of just like wearing his underwear. So if you picture that scene, it'd be kind of odd. Last night, I saw a lady outside of Walmart standing there in her underwear. It wasn't that odd because it was the Walmart on Perkins, so it didn't shock me that much. But had it been the other Walmart, it'd be kind of different. And so you can just picture here this kid wearing nothing but a linen garment. He was following Jesus, right? He's part of the crowd. And it says when they seized him, he fled naked, leaving his garment behind. Off he went to the races. Now, look at verse 66. It says, while Peter was below in the courtyard, so now Jesus has been arrested, he's been taken before the Sanhedrin, they're asking him a lot of questions. Peter is like watching from a distance, if you will. It says, while Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she looked closely at him. She goes, "You also were with that Nazarene Jesus," she said, but he denied it. Right? He didn't run, but he distanced himself. And he says, "I don't know or understand what you're talking about," he said, and he went out into the entryway. I want you to think about that. How many times in our lives we really wanted to make an impact? We didn't run to the point of saying, "I'm an atheist. I don't believe that. I'm disowning everything. I'm never going to church again." We didn't go that far, but when it got difficult, what we did was we distanced ourselves from the identity of a Christian for the purpose of kind of fitting in. Right? We so feared the rejection of the crowd that we just kind of distanced ourselves, and we ended up kind of just being like everybody else. Happened in your workplace, happens in your dorm, happens in your sorority. That we just kind of distance sometimes. Right? So it's not just, sometimes it could be just full-blown like, you just ran away, but a lot of times it's just this subtle distancing. And that's what he initially does. And then in verse 69, when the servant girl saw him there, she said again to those standing around, "This fellow's one of them." And again, he denied it. After a little while, those standing near said to Peter, "Surely you're one of them, for you're a Galilean." He began to call down curses on himself. He swore to them, "I don't know this man you're talking about," right? So now he really begins to distance himself. Now look, he's kind of metaphorically running away, isn't he? And then he hears this rooster crow. It says, immediately the rooster crowed the second time. Then Peter remembered the words that Jesus had spoken to him. "Before the rooster crows twice, you will disown me 3 times. And look what happens to him. And he broke down and he wept. Right? He was covered in shame. I'm not talking just about your garden variety failures, though they fit into the picture. I'm talking about the ones that you hope nobody ever asks you about. Right? Those times that you've given way, that you have failed spiritually. Right? That you functionally ran away. And I promise what happened because I've lived it. Guys, I'm on the same team. Like I have lived this on multiple occasions in my life. There comes some pivotal moment where the rooster sort of crows, right? Where you realize, oh, I've really blown it. Right? You realize that. And then the first thing that happens to you is you're just covered in guilt and shame. Covered in. And then we tend to just shut down because we really believe I cannot recover from this. That's what I do academically, right? You flunk a couple of tests and then you're like, I would keep going to class. I don't know why. There was no mathematical way that you were going to pass this thing, but I would kind of live in this idea of like, well, I guess if I just keep doing the thing, maybe something magical will happen, right? And so you'll keep up your routine of your marriage, or you'll keep up your routine of going to church, or you'll stay in a sorority or fraternity, but you'll be just like them. There'll be any power in that, and you'll just live in this guilt and shame, just like Peter's living in. He just breaks down and he weeps. Now let's turn to see how God responded to Peter, how Jesus responded to Peter after he was raised from the dead. So Peter's there like he's covered in shame. He's raised from the dead. Peter sees him then early on. And now we want to fast forward several days, and we're up here around this Sea of Galilee. That's where it all started, right? We're back where it all started. And if you're in John 21, verse 15, you're in the right spot. And it's pretty cool here what happens. If you got a pencil or a pen, you're going to need it. So Jesus kind of approaches them. He tells them to cast their nets over. There's this miraculous catch of fish. Verse 15 of chapter 21 of John says, when they had finished eating, Jesus talks specifically to Simon Peter. Right? The guy that got the right answer the first time, the guy that was fired up the whole way, and the guy, they all walked away, but the guy that got written about walked away. He says to Simon Peter, he says, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these? All right? Now, I ordinarily don't tell you about Greek, but in this case, it kind of matters. So, in Greek, there are different words for love. And they don't always mean different things, but in context, sometimes you can make a real differentiation. So on this one, I would encourage you to circle the word love. Because Jesus asked him a question, and he said, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me? Because that word for love is called agape. And not in every instance, but in lots of instances in the Scripture, that is kind of the highest form of love. Right? Just the best kind of love that could be had. So he asked Peter that. He says, do you love me? Do you have the highest form of love for me? And notice how Peter answers. He says, yes, Lord. He said, you know that I love you. Now, that word for love, I want you to underline. You circled the first one. I want you to underline this one. Because Jesus asked him a direct question, do you love me? Do you agape? Do you have the highest form of love for me? And he goes, yes, Lord, I love you. But that word is called phileo, like Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. That's sort of a companion love, right? Like, we're buddies. It's more than buddies, but it's less than this agape form of love. So he says, do you really love me? And he goes, oh, I love you. But it was a subtle difference in wording. But notice what Jesus says. He says, feed my lambs. And he says, do you really love me? And he goes, I love you. He doesn't challenge it right there. He doesn't go, it's not the question I ask. You know? What does he say? Get back in the game. Get back in the game. Feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me? Circle that one. Because he asked him again, do you agape, do you really love me? And he answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Underline that word for love. So basically he did the same thing again, but Jesus gave him the same answer. He goes, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Don't circle that one. Underline that one. So he said twice, do you love me, highest form of love? Do you love me, highest form of love? And then he looks at him and he goes, do you love me? Like phileo, like Jesus switched words. Like, do you even really love me at that level? And Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me, right? That he underlined that one. He was hurt because he switched the words. And he said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Underline that one. See, right there's when Peter stopped running. Right, because he owned up to it. He's like, you know that I'm loving you the best I can. I'm loving you with all I have. But no, it's not what you ask. It actually is this. Right? Right there, he kind of stopped running. He got honest with himself. All right? Now think about this. In your own lives, we run, we do all these things, and then we feel shame. And we want to get rid of that shame as much as we possibly can. And so that's what leads to various dependencies, various other horrible habits, various other distractions in our lives, because we want to get rid of the pain. We want to be rid of that shame. But that never goes away until a person can be honest with themselves. And notice that Jesus responds to him in the same way. Like, even when he gave this answer, the honest answer, Jesus didn't say, well, now you're disqualified. What did he say? Same thing he's always been saying, feed my sheep. And he goes on to tell him kind of like, hey, you're going to die a hard death, man. It's going to be a rough go. But he finishes it up by saying, then he said to him, verse 19, follow me. Peter goes on to be one of the greatest evangelists literally the world has ever known. God used him in unbelievable ways, right? Unbelievable ways. Why? Because I believe that Peter, in that instance, really understood the assurance of forgiveness. Like he really got it then. When he was able to get honest with himself, and he heard how Jesus responded to him in grace, he understood the nature of forgiveness, and he understood that God was really in control of his life. And we've got to pick up the pace here, but what you need to see is 1 John 1:9 says, if you confess your sin, God is faithful and just to forgive you and cleanse you from all unrighteousness. That's an important verse. You should memorize it. Because interesting, to confess means to just own up to something, right? It's to say, I did it. But look how it works. In your human relationships, right, you really bungle it up with your wife or with your husband or with another friend, and you confess, you're like, hey, I was a real jerk. What's the next thing that comes out of your mouth? Is you go, will you forgive me? You ask them to forgive you, right? And then you sit there and sort of wait, like, are they gonna? And it kind of depends upon them whether they want to forgive you or not, right? And some of you maybe beg for forgiveness. You jump through various hoops, do things that please them because you're hoping they will grant you this elusive forgiveness. Look at how that verse is written. It says, if you confess your sin, God is faithful and just to forgive you and cleanse you from all unrighteousness. You don't have to ask for forgiveness. It's already there. At the moment you get honest with God and own it, this is where I spiritually failed. God is so gracious, so kind and merciful that forgiveness comes. You don't even have to ask, right? That's an incredible character of God. Humans, we have to think it over and go, am I going to get hurt again or any of these kind of things, right? But God is so merciful and kind. He's forgiven you. And he says that he's cleansed you from all unrighteousness. So stupid things you did last night, 10 years ago, or that you're going to do this afternoon, whatever, right? It doesn't say cleanses you from part of the unrighteousness, from all of the unrighteousness. Now, it's pretty incredible because we meet another character, and we've got to go pretty quick on this. If you give me just a couple extra minutes, we're still going to go quick. So in Acts chapter 12, we see that that Peter's been put in prison. He's miraculously delivered from prison. He doesn't even really understand what's going on. But in his deliverance from prison, he ends up going, in Acts 12:12, says it sort of dawns on him, and he says he goes to the house of Mary, the mother of John, called Mark, this guy named John Mark, where many had gathered and they were praying. So we learn of this, it's like this kid, right? And we learn a little bit in there that he's actually the cousin of this guy named Barnabas. And so this John Mark kid hangs out with Paul, with Barnabas, with the others for 2 years, right? This after Jesus has been raised from the dead, he hangs out with them. It's amazing. He's really growing. Things are fantastic. And then in Acts 13:13, the dude gets a chance to go on a mission trip with Paul. And Paul wrote most of the New Testament, right? So you're going to get to go on, you got called up to the majors. You get to go on a mission trip with this guy. And so we see Acts 13:13 says, Paul, Barnabas, and Mark, John Mark, was with them as their helper. They went to several towns in Cyprus, and they saw some incredible things happen. It says, then they sailed to Perga and Pamphylia, and look what happens. This dude, John Mark, it says he left him and he went back to Jerusalem. He ran away. He had a golden opportunity. Golden opportunity. And he ran away. He spiritually failed. 100%. Some of you are facing that too, right? You're looking down the barrel of a golden opportunity and you cave spiritually and you're like, I don't even know what to do now. What do you think he felt like? He felt good when he quit. It always feels good to quit. But then you get home. And then he's like, oh, what have I done, right? So now you rock on, you're 3 more years into it. And Paul and Barnabas wants to take this dude on a trip again. And Paul's like, nope, we're done. The guy who ran away, he's failed. So remember, Jesus was crucified about AD 33. And now we're at about AD 46 or 7. So you've got, 10, 13 years? I can't do math. Anyway, it's a while since Jesus has been crucified. And you got this guy that runs, right? And then here's what's amazing. That John Mark, what do you think came of him? Did you notice the book of Mark? Yeah, he wrote that. He wrote that book. And the church has always believed that he silently inserted himself as that boy that ran away naked. So, that's pretty incredible. He writes that book in AD 55. Right? It's 5 years after he ran away the last time, but it's like 25 or so years after he ran away the first time. This guy ran away multiple times. Yet, he ends up writing the book of Mark. And the story doesn't end there. Now, 30 years after he ran away, and Paul was like, I'm done. Here's what Paul has to say in Colossians 4:10. He says, my fellow prisoner Aristarchus sends you his greetings, as does Mark. So not only did the dude stop running, he came back, and now he's in jail with Paul. You cannot convince me that those failures did not serve as a strengthening mechanism in his life once he was able to get honest with himself. And Paul says, you've received instructions about him. If he comes to you, welcome him. And then in AD 67, or whatever, 30-some years passed, Paul's been rearrested. Now we're in 2 Timothy. Timothy from Rome just before his execution. And here's what Paul says, kind of a paraphrase. He goes, for I'm already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time has come for my departure. I've fought the good fight. I've finished the race. I've kept the faith. Do your best to come to me quickly. Only Luke is with me. And then Paul says, get Mark and bring him with you, because he is helpful to me in my ministry. Two quick things that you have to walk away with. Failure is not final. Do not let Satan convince you that your failure is final. Get honest with yourself. There's the second one. And stop running. Stop running. Go back into that sorority and own it. And say, the way I've been living my life is not consistent with what I actually believe. Go to your husband or wife and go, the way that I've been relating to you is not consistent with what I actually believe. Own it. I go into your workplace, and you've been behaving just like everybody else, saying all the words and all the things. Just own it. And you will be amazed at how God will begin to use you in the midst of just owning it. Do not let yourself just wallow in shame forever. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the chance to hopefully be an encouragement to people that I care about. Let us now sing with joy as people with new hearts and full faith that you will guide us through our failures. Amen.